Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk about our current situation in the UK and who is ultimately responsible for the mess, frankly, that we're in at the moment. I also, at the end of this video, I want to say a little bit about Rishi Sunak's father-in-law, Mr. Murty, who formed Infosys and is said to be worth $4 billion. His story is quite interesting, and if you don't already know about it, you might find it of interest. Now, as I'm recording this, the results of the local elections are half in, and it looks as though the Tories are not doing at all well, as expected. It's not surprising anyone. I think they should be concerned about Blackpool South, which was the only parliamentary constituency that was which was up for grabs yesterday. But I think otherwise, results are probably largely as expected. Now, looking at how things are at the moment, and we're all the time being told, let's just move on, forget what's happening right now. If you look at the utter incompetence of our government, and a prime minister who hasn't got a clue what he's doing. And when you look at the consequences of the last, whether it's 5 or 14 years of Tories, we've got the highest taxes ever. We've got huge cost of living crisis, which is affecting everybody. The NHS is falling to pieces, and 7 million on the waiting list. You can't get a dentist. Courts are in crisis. Nobody's getting tried, unless, of course, you're an asylum seeker. And we've got councils over the country going bust. I mean, we're in a terrible, terrible state. And everybody can see that. Everybody can feel that. There's no great surprise. It's no great news. And yet you have to say, well, how do we get in this? How did you get into this mess? How did everything slide so much? And how does it keep on sliding? And of course, everything is always blamed on COVID and the war in Ukraine. And when you look at how standards have fallen, when I was growing up, and until 2016, in fact, but when I was growing up and following politics and so on, all my life, I always regarded senior politicians, or all politicians really, as being honest, regardless of whether you agree with their policies or not. They were always regarded as honest, in the way you expect judges to be honest, or you expect senior army officers to be honest. It was just taken that you would be honest, and people didn't lie, but they didn't lie in Parliament. And if you did lie in Parliament, you'd come back right away and you'd explain it and excuse it and apologise, and chances are you might have to resign. But that's all changed now. I mean, we see every week, we see Sunak lying his head off. I mean, even this week in PMQs, he's going on about how everybody is £900 a week better off now as a result of his national insurance reforms. Well, everybody knows, and the IFS and various other bodies have confirmed that, in fact, most people are not even half that much better off, and a lot of people are even worse off. But nonetheless, he will keep repeating that, and week after week he comes in and tells lies. And you get senior ministers lying as well, because lying is now accepted in Parliament. It's okay, you can just lie. No one's going to pull you up on it. The Speaker isn't going to stop you. And this so degrades politics. And so a lot of debates are just a complete waste of time, because you've got the government lying and never accepting that they're lying or accepting any challenges. And I think when you look at government over the past 4 or 5 years, or since 2016, you look at the COVID business, and you look at the 14.9 billion of PPE waste, stuff that's being burnt. I think apparently we're paying the Chinese to store waste store PPE that they've never even shipped because it's not suitable, but it's all been paid for. And there are all these people like Michelle Mone, although she's being pursued a bit, but all these other people, they bought their Bentleys and they bought their houses in Malibu, and they probably got their private planes and their yachts, and it's all taxpayers' money. And it's all thrown away. And what's the response of the Prime Minister? Oh, that's in the past. We've got to move on. We're not going to chase that money. And there are all these something like 7 billion in bounce back loans. This is money lent to firms to get them through the pandemic. This is money which was very, very easy to come by and required no checks, and it was all given away. But there again, he doesn't want to chase that. Don't want to bother chasing that. That's 7 odd billion. And you look at how he failed to insure against the interest rates going up, which cost us 11 billion. And you look at a test and trace, which ended up costing 28 billion for what the Public Accounts Committee regarded as a virtually complete waste of money. And so these billions and billions and billions out of utter incompetence that have been wasted. And what's the response to the Prime Minister? Let's go after the poor people. He wants to chase benefits claimants to see they haven't been claiming too much. That's where he wants to concentrate his efforts. There was a piece in The Guardian last week, I'll read you, they're talking about how they're going after carers who are very often not paid at all. And they spoke of one woman. They said she was a 92-year-old woman with advanced Parkinson's who was ordered to pay back nearly £7,000 in disability allowance after failing to notify the department of a change in circumstances 5 years ago when she was in the early stages of dementia. Now, don't worry about if you've got 10 billion out of, you've got millions, 10 million, 100 million out of PPE con, or you've got strings and strings of bounce back loans, or you somehow have got a load of money out of trust. Don't worry about all that. Not going to go after that. Go after this old lady, this 92-year-old lady. And it's just utterly disgusting. And I think it's a sign of just how utterly incompetent Sunak is, that these are his priorities. He thinks he's in a desperate state now, really desperate, no idea what to do, the most clueless Prime Minister we've ever had, a man who just got no idea how to do politics. And he thinks that if he goes after poor people, if he goes after miserable asylum seekers and terrorises them all, that's going to get him votes. And I think he's making a big mistake. I think people are reacting against this. I don't think people think it's fair. And I think people really don't like seeing people who are desperate and being challenged about their claims for benefits. Some people are fraudulent, some people need pursuing, but to just clamp down on benefits fraud, on benefits claimants as a way of trying to get political support is really outrageous. And likewise with the just trying to stop the boats, this absolutely pointless, ridiculous, extremely expensive game of trying to send people to Rwanda, which is taking up so much government time. Complete and utter waste of time. But you have to look and see how this all happened and how our standards all collapsed, how lying became normal, and how this incompetence, this inefficiency, this just letting things pass, this writing off this money, is where it all started, and it all goes back to one person. It all goes back to Boris Johnson. This is a man who, he just lies all the time. A man who is completely self-centered, is only interested in himself, and a man who had the charm, the charisma, the personality, and the wit to persuade millions of people to follow him, to support Brexit, because that's what he supported, and who supported him becoming Prime Minister. And it wasn't until he just went too far that everybody turned against him. Now, of course, he's a very lonely and miserable soul, lost soul, I would say. But his attitude was that lying was okay. I mean, he used to lie in Parliament. We all used to see it, and he was never called up on it. And we know that he behaved as though rules didn't apply to him. You know, this is what was the basis of Partygate, wasn't it? The fact that he was telling the whole country that to stay at home and not go out, and he's having parties, and other rules, like, for example, I mean, even yesterday he went to vote, didn't he? And he didn't take his ID, thinking, of course, that rules didn't apply to him. The rules which he, of course, brought in. And incidentally, on the subject of voter ID, it was his idea, and his claim was that this would actually this would stop fraud, voter fraud. In the 2019 election, there were 32 million votes cast, and 5 of them were found to be fraudulent and prosecuted. 5 out of 32 million. And as Jacob Rees-Mogg admitted publicly. The whole scheme was just to really give the Conservatives some advantage by making it more difficult for young people and particularly old people without passports to vote. It was just a con. But anyway, this constant lying is now acceptable, and when you look at the example that Johnson set with regard to, he's just this sort of self-obsessed consumption. You look at that immensely expensive wallpaper, and you look at all the cheap all the free holidays he got, and all the free food he was getting. And I think it was said that that Bamford fellow, who the JCB guy, who's now suddenly disappeared, and it said it's alleged that he might owe 500 million to HMRC. He was providing food for Johnson and his wife, and you think this is such a bad example, because other members of government, other members in Parliament, I think, well, he's getting all these freebies, why shouldn't I? And of course, when you accept gifts, you immediately make yourself vulnerable. And there's a case of again, when he went off to party in Italy that time when he was Foreign Secretary, and hobnobbing with Lebedev, who he subsequently put in the House of Lords, and Lebedev's father, who was a mate of Putin's, and who knows what went on there. And to compound everything else, he sacked all the decent MPs. He sacked all the people who weren't prepared to go along with to vote for Brexit. People like Dominic Grieve and Rory Stewart and Ken Clark and Nicholas Soames and so on. They're all chucked out because they wouldn't agree with what he wanted. This man poisoned British politics, and it's difficult to unpoison it. You can't really reverse back. It's very difficult. When we get a Labour government, which we will have very soon, I'm sure they'll not be corrupt. I'm sure they'll not be openly dishonest. But it's now established you can get away with it if you want to. And everything, as I say, everything comes back to Boris Johnson, this loose, selfish, incompetent, and really rather foolish character who's caused us so much harm. Now, if you've been kind enough to watch my videos in the past, you'll know that I don't have a very high opinion of Sunak. I think he's a rather unpleasant fellow, frankly. I think he's completely spoiled. I don't think he's got any idea as to how ordinary people live. He gets very tetchy, very quick-tempered if anybody challenges him, or if he's asked questions he doesn't like, and so on. I think he's used to getting his own way. I think he's a complete failure. I think he's absolutely inept as a Prime Minister, and totally incompetent. He's got no idea how to do politics. He is just hopeless. Not a nice fellow at all. People say he's very nice, but I don't think so. I think somebody who's prepared to victimise desperate asylum seekers and to victimise people on benefits in order to try and get more votes for his own career, or to save his own career, is in my book is pretty low. But I want to talk about his father-in-law, Mr. Narayana Murthy, his wife's father, because he's quite different, and his story is really very interesting, and I hope you find it of interest. He's worth $4 billion, and he's made all this from Infosys, which he started from scratch. Now, I first heard about his story because, you're liable to think you hear some guy in India, he's made $4 billion, I bet he's exploited all sorts of people, I bet he's really got slave labour, and I bet he's bribing right, left and centre, and I bet he's up to all no good. It's the sort of thing that people lazily think. And the same way as I see in my comments, people will say, Sunak's just hanging around just to get contracts for the family business for Infosys, and whenever a government department enters into a contract with Infosys, that's just for Sunak, because he's arranged that. And I first heard about him, his life story, in a podcast. It's a BBC podcast called Good Bad Billionaire. It's presented by Alistair Jack, who's the BBC business correspondent, and a lady called Zing Seng, who's a business journalist. And they told his story, and I found it very, very interesting. And so I did a bit of research afterwards, and I managed to find a couple of interviews of him and his wife on YouTube. Absolutely fascinating. Now, his story briefly is this: that he came from a reasonably good family, and he went to university. He got 2 degrees, and he was interested in software, and that's what he was studying. I think he saw the future was in software, and he then started a business, and that went bust. And so, in due course, he went off to Paris. He worked there for 3 years, writing software. Then he hitchhiked back from Paris to India, got a job, and then after a while he and some colleagues decided to start their own business, and that was Infosys. They didn't have any money at all. At this time, Murty was married, and his wife was keeping a bit of money aside for a rainy day, and she had $250 which she gave him, and that was the money they started Infosys with. Now, right from the very start, he said that he didn't want to be involved in anything dishonest. He didn't want any bribery. He didn't want to take bribes. He didn't want to give bribes. He wanted to be as much democracy as possible amongst the management of the company, and he wanted all the employees to benefit if the business did well. In other words, he set out with a really moral plan. And being a business that was known as being honest, he in due course got a contract from a big American company, and that got them going. From then on, they were on their way, and in no time the business grew and grew and grew, and now it's worth vast amounts of money. And he is no longer involved. He hasn't been involved for the last 10 years. He's known as the emeritus chairman. He has a very small shareholding. His family also have very small shareholdings as well. So he's out of the business, and he and his wife spend their time really doing charitable business, philanthropic business. And the great thing about him, and this is what I found so interesting, is that he's worth all this money, this staggering amount of money, $4 billion. Yet he and his wife, and on one of these interviews you can see his wife, incidentally, they're both very intellectual, and she's as clever as he is. And they both say in the course of the interview that either one of them could have started Infosys. They were both equally capable, but it was decided that she'd look after the children. They have a daughter who's married to Sunak and a son. She'd stay home, and that he would work, and it seems he worked all hours that there were. And the interesting thing is that they still live in a flat, and they don't have any extravagances whatsoever. He drives a normal car. He helps with the housework. He helps doing the cooking, and he cleans his own bathroom. And he's a thoroughly modest guy. He did say that until Infosys reached a billion turnover, they used to fly in the back of the plane, fly tourist class and economy rather, and all in all, they seem to be very modest, nice, honest, decent people. If you watch the interview, you can't but conclude anything else. And I found that quite interesting and quite nice. I mean, we're all used to billionaires living so extravagantly. I know there are others, like the guy who started IKEA and the guy who started Zara. They both live very modestly, apparently, as well. But it's nice that someone should not that should choose to live modestly and to do so. And I can't but help think that with such decent moral parents, that their daughter can be anything different. I'm sure she must be a perfectly decent woman as well. There are, of course, questions remain as to how she got involved in all these small businesses that got government grants and things, and then eventually went bust and owing tax and all the rest of it. But there's probably a very good explanation of that. I have no idea what it is. But all in all, I think, the comparison. I would guess that Murty probably doesn't really approve of Sunak when he sees the way he behaves, especially the way he behaves towards people who are disadvantaged, such as people claiming benefits and so on. I think he take a pretty dim view of that, since they spend their lives helping poorer people and people who are in need of help. But anyway, that in a nutshell was his story. I think, as I said before, I think there's a tendency really to just write people off without even thinking about it. I think you should be fair. They're decent people, very nice, decent people, and good luck to them. But anyway, that's what I think about it. If you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd appreciate it if you do so. And so until next week, thanks again, and bye for now.